talking to Sister Marie Kealy, which is her name now, but it was Sister Cynthia when she lived in Ballyfermot in the Dominican Convent there. She taught for many years. Sister, your earliest memory, where did you originate from, Sister?
Well, I was brought up in Drumcondra in Dublin, over near the Clonliffe Road end of Drumcondra, in the parish of Iona Road, and we were brought up there, and I went to school in Iona Primary School, where the Holy Faith Sisters were teaching in that. And then I went for secondary education. I went to Eccles Street, which was a Dominican convent, had a big Dominican convent there at the time, and it had a number of educational enterprises going on in Eccles Street with the Dominicans. They had a private junior school for boys and girls, boys up to the first communion age and girls up to went to the secondary. And then there was Dominican College, which was, the teaching there was through English, and it was well renowned. I'll tell you a little more about it later. And as well as that, from 1928, now I wasn't in it in 1928, but it was opened, Scoil Ketrina was opened in 1928 by a person called An Máthar Trasan ní Lanagáin, who was a County Clare woman and very fond of the Irish language and wanted to promote it, and so did others of the community as well. And they opened this school called Scoil Ketrina, which in its time became famous as well for the pupils who turned out from it and took their place in society in whatever form. So that was my school days. And at the end of my school days, I don't know whether now, with hindsight, was I wise or was I foolish, but I decided I would join the Dominicans at the end of after leaving cert in 6th year. And that was 1945. And went to the novitiate, which was in County Kildare at the time, in a place called Cardiffstown. It was later taken over by Roadstone because there were not kind of quarryable materials in the land there that they were interested in. So after that then, you see, I entered straight from school, and some girls would have done that, and quite a number did, in fact most of them. But some people would have left school, maybe gone to college and taken a degree in arts or whatever, or gone and did nursing maybe, or did something else, or even went and were working in offices. And but however, I was one of the breed that went in just after 6th year, and there were 18 of us who entered that particular year. I was looking at the list recently, and there are 4 of us alive still. One of the 18 who didn't stay too long, she was from Belfast, but we lost track for, we think she went to England and possibly married over there, but whether she's still alive or not, I'm not too sure. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, they're all up with the Lord, we hope, and 3 or 4 of us poking around still on earth.
So you joined the Dominicans then?
Yes, I did.
And what year was that now, Sister?
1945.
1945 you joined there.
Yeah.
And where were you when you were professed? Where?
When I was professed then, I was sent, there were some of us, now, yeah, this is the beginning, the background to Ballyfermot, if you like. We didn't know at the time, but there was, as you said in your book, that the corporation had their eye on the lands beyond, up over the Liffey there, and they had planned to put a housing estate in it, but war broke out, as everyone knows, in 1939 and ended in 1945, as it was happened. But still, it took them a few more years to get back on the trail of Ballyfermot. But they did begin, as you say, in 1947 to start building houses in it. Now, we didn't know anything about this we didn't, when I say we, I mean the ordinary run-of-the-mill Dominican sisters, we didn't know. But what was happening, that Archbishop McQuaid, of course, had a keen eye on his archdiocese, and any new developments like that, he would be quick to see that, well, schools would be needed and all this, that kind of structure, schools and maybe hospitals maybe, but that didn't happen. But certainly schools were needed, churches were needed, and where were they going to get the personnel to man or woman all these places? So he began negotiations with the superiors of the Dominicans at the time. We call them the council, the general council, and they lived in Cabra, in our convent in Cabra. And there were 4 women there who had been elected. We used to have regular elections every 6 years, and the Consul General might be re-elected, or they might not be re-elected, or it went on like that. But at the time I'm talking about, the 4 people that were in charge, like as a general council over all this, and they would have been the people to whom the Archbishop would have applied to ask them if they would be interested in starting a school in Ballyfermot, and that's exactly what happened. And the 4 people in the Consul General were Mother Reginald Lyons, she was the Prioress General as we called them then, Mother Columkill Flynn, Mother Alberta Grant, and Mother Joseph Magdalene Silk, who lived down in the convent in Wicklow. Now, they would have been approached and asked, as I said, I'm repeating myself now, that by the Archbishop, would they be responsible for these schools. Now, in the correspondence, I haven't much correspondence between the Archbishop and, or at least we haven't much in the archives. We have a few letters, but enough to tell us that they were interested, and not alone were they interested, but the 4 of them, or 3 of them certainly, would have gone out to Ballyfermot and looked at this place where the school would be, and looked at possible sites, and I presume there were people there from the corporation and people there maybe from the archdiocese and themselves, but they went out privately too and had a good look around. And I think there was a school mentioned in Clondalkin at the time too. I think a new secondary school or something was required there, and I think the Archbishop had said to them, we need a school in Clondalkin as well, another secondary school. But in the letter, they said, when we went out to see the site, we realised that the Ballyfermot need is greater than the Clondalkin need, because they have already schools in Clondalkin and they may be able to extend them or something, but Ballyfermot is a vast area and it's going to be a very big undertaking, and we better be prepared for that. So they said yes to the Archbishop, we'll go. And that's how that happened. Now, they wouldn't have spread that news all around the congregation at the time, because I suppose, I don't know, maybe they were secretive, but I don't think it was that. It was just that they didn't always discuss the business publicly, like what was going on, until, you see, you could blow your horn and say, we're going to do this and that, and then it might all fall through, and you'd be, it would be very embarrassing to do that kind of thing, to forestall the would-be maybes into we are going to. And so that we didn't know, the ordinary people in the communities didn't know as soon as others, as the General Council, they didn't let it be known for a while that we were thinking of this. But anyway, here were we young ones, and we were sent off to Carysfort, which was the training college for primary teachers in Dublin, and it was run by the Sisters of Mercy in Blackrock, Carysfort, and we qualified there after with 2 years qualification course at the time, and then I was sent to Cabra, and the other sisters were sent to other convents, but I wasn't too long in Cabra. I went to teach in Cabra in 1951, and the following, I was there 51, I was there from September until the end of the following school year, 1952. I was there still teaching, until February or Christmas 1952 or January 53. I was told that I would be one of the people that would be going to this new place in Ballyfermot. So 6 of us went on, I think it's the 2nd of March, if it's not the 3rd of March, 1953, we went out to Ballyfermot. But it's not the Ballyfermot we know now. It was the Ballyfermot that was in process of being built. The church had just been opened, I think, the previous year, or if not just the same year, 1953.
Right.
The big
15th
church.
of March, that was open.
Yeah. And the De La Salle had all their buildings up. Now, they weren't using all their buildings yet because they were in process. And they lent us or allowed us to use the top story of Scully's, which is the school, the school nearest the convent, what is our convent now. But there was nothing like convent there when we looked out the windows of the De La Salle across the way. There was Lynch's Lane in the middle. And you looked out across Lynch's Lane, there weren't just fields and muddy places. But the building began in our place in 1953 also. So we were keenly watching it. But we had no convents, therefore we had to go in and out every day. And we went in and out by car. And we lived, the 6 of us went in and out every day. And the day we opened the school was, I think, this, as I said, I'm repeating again, the 2nd or 3rd of March 1953. And 350 little girls and their mummies turned up, queued up outside the De La Salle Scully's gone that morning. And we were there then to meet them and greet them and take the little ones into the school. Now, Ballyfermot had been built, partially built, and the houses they were by degrees, they were coming to live in the houses, but they had no amenities. The buses weren't very regular, and if they were, they stopped down near Inchicore, down there, near St. Lawrence's Road. People who lived there will know what I'm talking about. And you had to walk then through muddy roads which were unfinished at the time, into your own house, wherever it was. And so that they were at the disadvantage of not having shops, not having schools until the De La Salle appeared and we appeared, but then we could only take limited numbers because we hadn't got the room for them at the time. And so 350 little girls, and the rule of thumb for us was they were to be over 6 years of age, never been to school, and had not made their first communion. Now, if they failed on any one of those things, we weren't going to take them in, and we didn't. I suppose we refused a few. I can't remember refusing, but it must have happened. So 350 anyway were admitted that day, and they all lived up to this criteria of not, not being over 6, not having made their first communion, not having never been in school. Kind of a negative way to go at it, but we couldn't have managed otherwise. So there were 5, 6 of us, and the person who was in charge of all this, in charge of us, was our prioress, as we would say now, was a person called Mother Ignatius Gorman, and she had come from our convent in Dunleary. And at the time, I now know that she must have been 60 years of age. But we were in our 20s.
Yeah.
We thought she was an old woman. But of course she wasn't an old woman, and she was a very, very good, capable person, and a great organiser, and very thoughtful for the children and all that. She was really excellent, and she did a wonderful job of organising all that vast school eventually over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. So she was looking after things. Now she could well, and she did some teaching all right, but the other 5 of us were given 60 plus children each, dividing up to 350. If you do your maths, you know what we had. But anyway, it was around the 60 mark, or maybe more. And the very first day, we had nothing. We had no desks, we had no chairs. So we put them into the 5 classrooms. The Della sat on the floor, and they were enjoying themselves, and we couldn't teach them very much that day. But we were kind of trying to learn their names and tell them about who we were and what our names were, and if you'll all be in my class now, and my name is, and will you all remember that? That went on. And that's what we did. I suppose we let them home early. I can't remember the details of it. But before we let them home, what do you think happened? An inspector came from the Department of Education to see were we okay and were we running the thing properly, I suppose, I don't know. But we were surprised at that they didn't lose much time in checking us out. So that went on all right. So by degrees then, I could be here all day telling you about the first year, but by degrees, when the convent then, the building across the road, we used to keep an eye on the building, and you know the way the schools are, there were 3 big blocks up the road, up as far as the church, and they started on the first block, which in time we called St. Michael's, and that's where the little boys were in the beginning. But in the very beginning, the girls were there because we didn't take boys for a year or 2, 1 year anyway. And according as time went on, 1954, there were more rooms ready in the next block, so we began to move into St. Gabriel, and it went on like that for a couple of years, until we had at one stage, and it's noted in the records, that there were 4,019 children on the campus.
2019.
So that was something. Now what did we do staff-wise? The 4 or 5 of us and Mother Ignatius, when we moved into the next phase in 1954, September 1954, we got 3 or 4 more nuns. We had Sister Eleanor Dwyer, Sister Maura Corbett. I hope I remember them all now, or I'll be in trouble. Sister Maura Corbett,
you're doing well,
Sister Valentine, Sister Eleanor Cosmas Valentine, and a Sister Patricia, I think she came from the north. So we got 4 more nuns, and then by degrees the nuns were multiplied, and then we began to take lay teachers as well, advertise for and take lay teachers. And I would like to say this now and put it on record, that I think that we owe a great, we should admire Mother Ignatius's wisdom, because there were plenty of young women coming out, and we weren't going to, taking on a man teacher would have been unheard of in those days in a girls' school. So these young women from Carysford, and some came from Limerick Training College too, she would contact the training college in advance of the school year and say, probably next year we will need 10 teachers or 5 teachers or whatever the number was that she would have forecast. And they would come out and be interviewed and they'd be taken on. So that's how the staff was built up. The nuns, fortunately for us, it was in the time when vocations, as we call them, that is, people who feel called or have a vocation to the religious life, they were very plentiful in those days.
Mm-hmm.
So the nuns' numbers increased until eventually we had over 30, I would say, in the community. And we had, I couldn't tell you how many, multiply 25 by 3, we'd over 100 lay teachers anyway, I'm sure. So that was the very beginning. The very beginning.
And could I just take you back a bit further? When you heard you were coming to Ballyfermot, Sister,
Yes.
did you do any research? Did anyone say what Ballyfermot was going to be like, or
No,
no?
nobody knew.
You just came as a
Yeah.
yeah.
We didn't know what it was going to be like.
Yeah. Oh, you
Until
heard
we
nothing.
arrived and saw the fields,
I
and then
see.
we said, oh,
Yeah.
so this is where we'd be. And then watching the buildings going up. But beyond that, we didn't. And another thing, we were enclosed, an enclosed order at that
Yes.
time. So therefore, we couldn't get out and take a walk up the road and see what was going on up on Lally Road or something, or where was the church or what it was like inside. We couldn't,
Yeah.
and because we were enclosed. So what would happen at First Communion times was that the lay teachers would take the children up from the school. We'd be down in the school in the morning, First Communion, and all that. We would have had 300 at a time for First Communion between the little boys and the girls. The little boys were taken into the school fairly soon, I would say in 1954, or at the very latest 1955. And Sister Germana Skean was in charge of the boys' school, as
Yeah.
Sean there knows now. And the boys and the girls all made the First Communion on the same day. And there were, as I say, 300 was kind of average number we would have every year for a few years. And we were not allowed out, so the lay teachers did all that for us, and they had to give up their Saturday, and were very generous in all that and doing it, never batted an eyelid about it, must say that. But the thing also, what I really am thinking in the back of my mind was, when I say that Mother Ignatius applied to the training colleges, and as a matter of fact, Sister Kathleen Crowley, who is the prioress of this house here in Sign Hill today, Sister Kathleen Crowley was one of these lay teachers who came in those early days from Carysford and got a job teaching in St. Michael's School. And she stayed a few years teaching with us, and then she went off home to Kerry, and after a while she decided that she would like to join the order, which she did, and she's here today. And we're very happy about that.
Yeah.
But I think she was the only, she was not the only one who entered. We had a few more that entered as well. Sister Marie Morrissey, who is from Ballyfermot, and Sheila Wade, who is also from Ballyfermot. Now Sheila has spent most of her life in Portugal. We have a convent there, and that convent had closed recently, so she's back in Ireland. And Sister Marie Morrissey has taught in a lot of schools around Ireland, in the north and in the south, and she's still around in Dublin too. So back to Mother Ignatius and the teaching and the teachers. She very wisely, I think she must have advertised in country newspapers, I don't know, but she did anyway. Also made sure she got on her staff some teachers who had good experience, not just out of training college, but in teaching. Some of them had been principals in country schools, and now their families were growing up and they wanted to move to Dublin to get third level education for their families, or whatever reason, or maybe the husband got a job in Dublin, whatever reason. They moved to Dublin, and we had quite a number of those mature people, I would call them, I suppose now, who had good, experienced people, maybe might be a nicer word, and they were like bedrock, because, as I told you, most of us who began off were straight out of college, and we weren't yet 30 years of age. Might have been one or two that were over 30, but not. And like, we had to take charge and be principals long before normally we would have been appointed to do so. So it was great to have these experienced ladies from various parts of Ireland whose families had moved to Dublin, and they came teaching with us, and they were, I have to say, the backbone of the teaching staff. All of them were very, very good. We had a few characters in it and so on. And one of the teachers we had was a lady called Mrs. Tinney, and Mrs. Tinney was very, very musical, and she loved training choirs. She has a grandson called, what's his name? He's a musician anyway, well renowned in Ireland. He's often, you see, I don't know if he's still living in Ireland, but he was Hugh Tinney, a very good pianist and renowned worldwide. But anyway, his granny, Mrs. Tinney, was a great character, and she loved this business of training choirs. Well, she had great scope, you see, did all these hundreds of children. So she had a couple of choirs, and she put them in for various feshes, like the Feis Ceol or the Feis Matthew, or the Dublin Feis, as it was, the Feis Clia. And they began to win prizes, and they got their names on the paper, and we were all delighted. Because it was a boost for the school, and it was a boost for the children, and they loved it. They really loved it. And that was one big thing in our lives. Now, how did we, you see, they couldn't go off in a choir unless they were in some kind of uniform, so how were we going to organise that for all these people? So some of the smart nuns said, we'll make skirts for them. We'll make skirts. So Sister Eleanor and Sister Cosmos and Sister Valentine, and I'm sure others, and I'll be killed for not mentioning their names, but anyway, I wasn't one of the sewers, but those who could sew, they certainly, Sister Eleanor, Cosmos and Valentine, they made over 100 skirts for these girls, and then the mummies bought them a blouse, a white blouse, and they were dressed for the feis. And we have some pictures of it. I hope be able to put them into some order sometime, but they're not very good. They're copies of newspaper pictures. They don't come out very well. So that was the beginning of it.
Just if I could bring you back a little bit where you said, and doing the research for the book that time, I felt that was very sad that you weren't allowed to leave the convent with the kids over to the school for their communions or confirmations.
But we knew we couldn't do it.
I know it was a rule.
Worry us too much. But with hindsight, it would have been very nice to do that. No, maybe the rules were too strict. And you see, that's why Vatican II came on after that 1966 or 7 or something, and began to loosen up all this stuff. And after that, we could go out and did go out and went out visiting their homes and everything after that. But we had no idea how far it was for a child to walk from, let's say, the end of Landon Road up to the school, or from someplace in Blackditch Road up to the school. And why were they late in the morning on a spilling wet day and no buses coming down, maybe no fare for them? You see, money was very, very scarce in those days, and a lot of the daddies were working in England, and the mothers were trying to cope with, as best they could, with largish families on the whole, and very little cash coming in for anything. So we would make do with a lot in the school. We tried to make stuff that instead of buying stuff, or if you knew that somebody was working in the mills in Clondalk, and somebody's daddy was in the mills, he'd hear that maybe the school might do with a bit of paper or something, and he would go to the manager in Clondalkin and he'd say, well, you can have the scrap, the leftover of all these rolls of paper or whatever, you can take them. And they would bring them to the school and we would graciously accept them. And they used to use them then for doing their art and all that. But otherwise, you know, it was tough going money-wise. So I'm puffed out now. Can I have
no,
the rest?
you're doing well. But you also took part in the community in a way when you were allowed out then, didn't you?
Oh yes, another thing that we did very... I was looking up the records the other day, and we went to live in Ballyfermot in 1955. 55, am I right? I am. 55, yes. And there were 13 or 14 of us that went in as a community, and each year a few more sisters would be sent until the number, we had a sufficient number in the school. We never had a sufficient number in the schools for the high size of them, but as many as could be afforded without leaving every other school in the congregation short of staff. But they were very generous to us in sending us sisters all the time. Very early on, they started a branch of the Legion of Mary. They started a branch of the Girl Guides under Sister Margaret McCluskey, who is still living and here in this house. They started, what else did we have? We had team in the secondary school opened in 1956. Yeah, 56. We were living a year there before we opened the secondary school. And when the secondary school came on, we used to have matches. They used to have matches with some of the other Dominican schools, like the girls from Sign Hill would come in and play them a match with them or wherever. And all that was going on. And basketball was another thing they could do. And you didn't have much equipment for basketball except the pole and the ball itself. So we tried that. And then we also had going two clubs for working girls. Now, as you know, the school leaving age was 14 at that stage, and girls who left school usually went into factory work around the place. If they didn't go on to the secondary school, that's what they did, because, as I say, money had to be earned in all the families to bring everybody up, and the eldest ones had to go out to work. Maybe sooner than the parents would have liked, but that's the way it was. So then, what did they do with themselves at the evening time? So, in Cabra, where I was teaching before I went to Ballyfermot, they had girls' clubs. And this was financed partially by Corda La Lasoiga, which was a semi-state body that looked after youth welfare, is the best way I could translate Corda La Lasoiga. A council or a group, a committee for the welfare of youth, and they would subsidise you to the extent that you could hire a teacher maybe to bring in somebody who would teach these girls dressmaking and any other kind of needlework, knitting and so on, if they wanted to do that. We also were able to hire somebody who could come in and teach them dancing. So the clubs consisted of the girls coming and paying maybe threepence and a night, and we had it 2 nights a week, I think, each. I think we had 2 nights a week each, not sure of that, but certainly we had 2 clubs, and certainly had 1 each anyway. But the girls would some of them would take to the sewing and would make dresses for themselves and all that, but they loved dancing and they loved singing, so they'd have all the songs or whatever was going at the time, and then they would dance around, and they would also chat to one another. And the club would open, say at 8 o'clock, and they would go home at 9:30, I think, around that time. Yeah. So they'd have a good hours and a half entertainment, and the mothers knew they weren't roaming around the streets or doing whatever. that might get them into trouble. So, that they very quickly after 1956, I'd say, those things were set up.
And then you showed films in the school?
We did, yes. Somebody got the bright idea that would be a good idea to show. And Mother Ignatius was, now I say, she put you in charge of something and she left you at it. And she wouldn't be poking around to see what development you might be up to or not doing it right or whatever. She let you get on with the job. So somebody suggested that we have these films, and she said, well, what would that mean? I said, mean you have to buy a projector. Oh, and what's a projector? Mother Ignatius would say she never heard of a thing. And like we mightn't hear of some of the modern stuff now that people come up with, all these, whatever you go on the internet and all that. It was foreign to us. It was as foreign to her as that was to us in the beginning. So she said, look, we'll get the money from somewhere. Go on, we'll do this. If you think it would help, we'll do it. So anyway, Saturday evening then we'd hire a film from wherever, somewhere in town. People used to oblige us by going out to collect them. Couldn't do that ourselves. Now we'd go in and collect our own film, but we'd get somebody to. Anyway, or they might have delivered them. And there were mostly cowboy films and harmless kind of stuff. A lot of noise and hurly-burly going on, but not much of story to them anyway. But if there was a bit of a story, like a bit of romance going on and all that, the kids who were only, under 12 years of age, maybe the eldest, most of them at this time, they used to get bored with that. And they'd stand up and begin to walk around, and there's a bit of time keeping them
in order. You went into the romance
keeping
system.
them in order to watch the romance until the action would begin again. Then the fellas would come over the hill. Like there's one of the films, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was seven brides for seven.
Oh, yeah.
7 brides for
7 brothers.
7 brothers or something like that was one of them. When the fellas would appear back and all that, even though they didn't like the romance, but there was a lot of shooting and firing, harmless kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
So they were the films. Well, we used to do things like that. I'm sure there are other things now that in the secondary school then they had their own choir, and there was a Sister Jude who was very, very still alive, Sister Jude Flanagan, and Maureen Flanagan now. And Sister Jude did the choirs for the secondary school as well as teaching all the week in the primary school. And she was very good, she was very gifted, and she taught them all sorts of things, classical and otherwise. And she would have, at Christmas time, we'd have a carol service, and maybe the parents could come in. We also had Gaelin came around one time, and they were promoting the Irish language. So what they did was they sent one of their staff around to lots of schools, and they went into all the classes and they would ask, anyone say a poem, anyone sing a song in Irish. Now it had to be in Irish. So a lot of them would come up and say, oh, I'll sing, or I'll dance, or I'll whatever. So they ended up that at the end of, say, 2 weeks of going around the classes, they organised a concert. And we had a lovely hall built, a lovely assembly hall, and it was good and spacious and very nice. And we had a nice stage on it, and curtains, you could really pull the curtains properly and all that on it. Now, the concert was organised for a certain night in the week, and the person who had come from Gaelin brought the tickets to the schools and said to the teachers, if you'd sell them in the classroom, you can sell them through the class, sell them to the children if they want them, and their parents can come and all that. So the tickets were all sold. I don't know how many we got, maybe 200 or something, I don't know. But the tickets were all bought in the school. But what we didn't know was that this fellow, this gentleman, also had somebody selling the tickets outside around the area. And he didn't tell us. So the night of the concert, big queue outside, and there was bedlam going on because the hall was full and no more could get in, and they were all waving tickets and sisters, and then the man owner said, "Oh yeah, I sold some outside." And I said, "You didn't tell us that this is all, you know." So we were in a bad way. Anyway, it was all sorted out. I think some of them had to go home. I think they did. I don't know the ends of it. But it was embarrassing, and it was funny too, because Gaelin, you see, the person from Gaelin was doing MC, and he could only speak Irish, and people didn't understand Irish. So they all talked over whatever announcement he was making. They didn't realise he was on the stage talking to them.
Yeah.
And it was, we, in the end, we had to say to him, "Look, go in there, we'll tell them what." So we would, one of the nuns or somebody would go out and say, "Look, this is what we're going to do now, so-and-so and so-and-so is coming out to sing, and so-and-so there." We do the announcing, but he had to do it officially in Irish. But it went off very well.
Yeah.
But I do remember a lot of chaos and anxiety and all that. But you sat down at the end of it all and you enjoyed it. You were glad you had made the effort, you know, to do. But this is no different from what went on in every school. I mean, we weren't any extraordinary bunch of women that went out and worked miracles. We weren't. We were just...
But you were there from the beginning, just a minute.
Yeah, we were there.
You were there.
And the beginnings were interesting, and it was interesting to see the development. And it's more interesting, and much more interesting, to see Ballyfermot now. I know they've had a hard time, and they've had the drugs, and we had Sister Queeveen, who has to be mentioned in this context. Sister Queeveen came to teach in Ballyfermot in the 1970s, I suppose. And she was talking to a girl one day, and the girl said that she was very worried about her own brother, who had somehow, now drugs were news to us in these days, we didn't know anything about them, and she told Sister Queeveen that the parents were worried about this, that he was out and he was getting stuff and it was affecting him, and they didn't know what the stuff was and all that. So Sister Queeveen said, "Well, would he come up and I'll have a chat with him some night or some day, bring him up." So she brought the lad up anyway. And from that, Sister Queeveen was sparked or inspired that maybe her job was no longer in the classroom. Maybe her job was to go out and try and work with these what we now call drug addicts, but it was at the very beginning of it. And she did, and she got permission from the powers that be that she would do that and give up. And she even went so far as to go and live up the road somewhere among the people. She got a room somewhere. And as she began this apostolate, if you like, or mission or ministry, whatever you call it, to try and help drug addicts and their families. Now, she was very keen on involving, if she could, some, especially the mothers, and try and help them through all this trauma they were going through with their sons or daughters, as it may be, but mostly boys, I think, in the drug scene there. And she has, I'm only repeating now what I said because I couldn't really say any more about it, that she had devoted the last part of her life for 30 years. She began in the 1970s, certainly 30 years, just full-time work, going around, going out, trying to help them, organising things for them to do. And
that was known as, that group that she started, that was known as
Candle.
The Candle. Yeah, oh yeah.
Candle,
yeah.
just Candle.
Yes, Candle.
Yeah, light a candle. Stop giving out about the darkness, light the candle.
And that's still going.
Yes,
that's still going.
Still going, and very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
I tell you who had great respect for her, the governor of Mountjoy, John Lonergan. John Lonergan thought Sister Queeveen was really very, very good in her efforts and what she tried to do. It must be very frustrating to try so hard and to find so many don't listen. And, she really I'd give her full marks for that. Sister Cuivin is now retired and living over in Cabra, but she spent 20-30 years hard work. She used to go to the courts with them. She would go, and when they came out, she got a place up the mountain. Somebody gave her a place, a little house or a little place up in a bit of land. She brought them up there. They stayed there until they would kind of get themselves sorted out again. And she taught them how to do, or she got them taught how to do a bit of gardening and how to do a bit of woodwork, and she tried her utmost. Now some of them responded and some didn't, and she just kept sedulously at it the whole time. And she spent the rest of her life, and she's still interested in it.
Unfortunately, the drugs have not only hit Ballyfermot, they've hit every parish in the country.
They have. But Ballyfermot it was open, wide open for them, really wide open for them. So she did. Now the Gardaí weren't always just best pleased with Sister Cuivin, because she would pursue the matter, and she'd defend the boys, though she would be very cross with them in her own mind. But she tried her very best to get them to get a job, stick at the job, change their friends, if you like, and I don't know how she did it, but she still stuck it out, and she's one of these people who has done Trojan work, and not always getting the recognition. Sometimes indeed she'd be criticised for what she did. She's only encouraging them. She shouldn't be letting them do this, and she should, but she really was very, very good.
Can I just say, we're joined here by Sister McCluskey, Margaret McCluskey, who also taught in Ballyfermot and lived on Culmore Drive for a time. Known then in Ballyfermot as Sister Zoe. Yeah. And you love Ballyfermot, Sister?
I loved it.
Brilliant, yeah. And you're retired here now?
I'm retired here. Yes.
Brilliant, yeah. Oh,
it was always a great place to work.
Yeah.
May I say something about Sister Zoe?
Yeah.
Sister Zoe was very devoted to her class and her girls, and she would bring them out for picnics out over to the Phoenix Park, or she'd bring them, I think she brought them one day to Portmarnock, didn't she?
Yes.
Would you like to tell them about the day you were in Portmarnock?
Yes, we went out early in the morning, to Portmarnock on the bus, and I never allowed them eat on the bus or anything like that, because then they'd have nothing for when it came. But of course you couldn't watch the bus. But we went out on the 32 bus, I think it was, or 3, and on the bus. And then when we got there, of course they'd all their lunch eaten. So we went up to Dunn's, that was you could see it from the Strand. And we're looking in the window. I only brought 2 children with me to carry whatever I'd get, and the rest were all at the window. And the manager came along and said, "Who are all those nice children? Where are you all from?" Ballier. So he was very generous to us and gave us free ice creams and all the rest of us very nice. And I still go out to Portmarnock, and I still think of the day I had on the Strand
with all the children.
And especially of them up at the Duns, the window looking in.
My God.
Yes.
Margaret, tell them the story about the girl and the was it a pony or a donkey they had, riding the donkey or the pony?
Yeah, there were donkey rides on the Strand, and but they wouldn't have the money, to do that. But we managed something anyway, and they were riding. And the next day, one of my girls was missing. And they said, "Sister, they told us not to tell you, but we're telling you." So she's gone out with her pony out to
Portman.
Yeah, and but the man that was running that knew what she had done and rang me up later on in the day not to worry about her, that she was looked at.
So, Sister Marie, you're in your 90th year,
I am, yes.
and you're going to write a book
Well, I'm in the process of so doing, yes.
about your
Yes.
life and times.
Well, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet.
Yeah,
now. I
yeah.
think maybe Dominicans in Ballyfermot or
That'd be great.
something like that.
Oh, we'll have to.
I don't know.
I'm sure it'll be a great seller.
We might get a better title for it. But yeah, I'm finding it difficult. I've loads of memories. The thing is what to put in and what to leave out.
Yeah.
And yeah, I find it, well, I suppose age is a factor in it, that I get tired easily. So and then the computer or the printing machine goes out of order, or all that sort of thing happens, and you get tired of it and you throw it there and you're doing nothing for a few days. And
My God.
that's the way it is.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll leave it there. And I want to thank both Sister Maura and Sister Zoe for coming in. God, it was great that you came in. Delighted, you know.
But I don't know why I came in.
Brilliant.
Because I was saying to you there, we
Oh,
don't
yes.
have anything, and you said no. And then somebody else met her and said, go in there.
Yeah. Oh, proper order. Yeah. And on behalf of Ballyfermot Heritage Group, Sean and myself, and the group, and I'm sure the Ballyfermot people, thanks for all your years in Ballyfermot and all that you have done for the students, you know. Like you can see, it was diverse there, what you've done between the drugs, the candle, the teaching, the community, showing the pictures, you know. I'm sure many people have great memories from that, you know.
Well, all I have to say about Ballyfermot is that the happiest years of my life were spent there. And possibly because I often say this, when we went there, we were young. Most of us were young. The children, of course, were young. The parents were young marrieds who had come out from the inner city and were very lonely for their own families and what they had left behind and the amenities and all that. And the poverty, there was a lot of poverty, and it was very hard on them, on a lot of them. And the people around the place, the priests were young, the curates were young at the time, the doctors were young.
Yeah.
The Little Sisters of the Assumption down the road used to do a great job in going out to the houses and helping these young mothers with the small children. And all that aspect of it I remember with great fondness and with great humour sometimes too, because we did have humour and we did enjoy being there. We did, I have to say, as a community we were very happy doing it. And thank God we were able to do it.
Thank God for it.
And God bless Ballyfermot and all in it.
Thanks very much, Sister.
Not at all.
Sisters, thank you very much.